Bronze and Modern Gods is the name. Comic collecting is our jam. Ah, you thought I was going to say game.
That was very gamey, I'll have to admit.
Gaming. I'm John, and that guy over there is Richard. What's going on, Richard?
Not much. How you doing, John?
I am doing well. Richard got to see Nine Inch Nails, Ministry, and Nitzer Ebb last night.
Yes. It was a great show. If you're into ancient alternative music, industrial music, it was a good show.
Is industrial still a thing? Does anyone under the age of 30 know what industrial?
Well, the funny thing is, Nitzer Ebb, they go on stage. It's just two guys, and it's the two of them fake playing the drums and fake playing the keyboards, because it's all recorded.
Yeah, as you do. Exactly.
Yeah. But it was a great show. It was an awesome show. All three bands.
Jealous. I wish I had been at that show. But we're here with you today together for viewer mail. And we've got always our underrated books of the week, the 25-year rule. And before we get to the hot book of the week, I want to talk a little bit about CGC's announcement today that they are now noting Newsstand and Multi-Pack editions on the label. Good news, right?
It is good news. It is good news. I'm glad to see they finally make it official. They've in the past for certain books have marked them Newsstand on the label, but it's not been consistent. And so now they're actually giving you a vehicle to submit your existing books that are Newsstand that do not have Newsstand on the label. They're adding a new checkbox to the reholder form to allow you to check that to make people look at the book when they actually grade it to mark it as Newsstand.
How gracious of them to allow you to resubmit the books that you've already submitted. This isn't a way to make extra cash for them at all whatsoever, is it?
No. But you know what? I've got a Ultimate Fallout 4 Newsstand. It's one of my favorite books in my collection. And I paid a lot of money for it back when it wasn't worth a lot of money. And I just don't think I'm going to send it in to get it reholdered. I don't have enough confidence in CGC to take care of my book, the book that is so important to me, so valuable to me. There's a chance something will happen to it, and CGC will shrug their shoulders and say sorry. I can't accept that for that book.
What I want to know is what happened to the outcry that we were told a couple months ago from prominent members of the comic community that demanded less notes on the label. Did that change?
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. That's interesting.
We're going to have less notes on the label, you guys. Oh, wait, by the way, except for this, we're going to add label notations for this now.
Well, they walked that whole thing back, haven't they?
They still won't note a detached cover, but they'll tell you if it was a newsstand attached cover. Mm-hmm. If only there was a way to tell a newsstand from a direct edition without noting it on the label, Richard.
Yeah, and that gives credence to me not wanting to take my book and turn it back in. I know it's a newsstand. Anybody who looks at it knows it's a newsstand. It has that barcode on it, and I don't need CGC's confirmation that it is a newsstand. So I'll keep it in my collection.
I will say the later books, like your Ultimate Fallout 4, it is tougher at first glance to see if it's a newsstand versus a direct edition. So that I can see. But God, this is here we go with me trashing CGC again. Such a cash grab. It's so obvious. They want everyone to go and rush and resubmit their books that they've already submitted so they can get a newsstand or multi-pack notation. I love the multi-pack notation. They're not going to call them Whitmans. They're not going to call them reprints. They're just going to call them multi-pack.
I think that's a compromise between Whitman and reprint. Yeah, I don't mind that name as much. And I do have other books that I am contemplating submitting. I got a She-Hulk number 40, the jump rope edition. That's a newsstand, and I'm thinking, I might send that one in. It's a 9.6. I wouldn't mind having it marked newsstand, but for the most part, this really isn't going to affect me in my collection. I'm just going to keep the books as is.
Now, I think if you had a newsstand of this next book, you should definitely send it in to get noted. And then is our hot book of the week. Richard, what is it?
It is Swamp Thing number 37. This is the first appearance of John Constantine. This is one of Alan Moore's best works, in my opinion. This whole series, this whole Thing series. It also features the art of John Tolben, who his art made the series for me. It's creepy and unsettling, and it's just a perfect canvas for Alan Moore's writing.
How did he do that and make a monthly deadline?
I know
20 pages with that intricate inking style and almost like scratchboard style. And he must be a speed demon. It's amazing. You say it's the first appearance of John Constantine, Hellblazer. I say it's the first appearance of Sting in DC.
Yeah. Now, Tolben also did the art for Alan Moore's Miracle Man. So if you're a fan of his art, don't pass up on Miracle Man, because it is just as a compelling of a story as Swamp Thing. I think Alan Moore really made Swamp Thing in his run a thing. I mean, it's just an incredible story. But the reason why this one's hot is this is kind of a good news, bad news kind of thing. The bad news is HBO's J.J. Abrams' Constantine television show was canceled, and it's announced to be dead, let's say. The good news is, surprise, Constantine number 2, the movie with Keanu Reeves was announced, and moving forward with Francis Lawrence set to direct it again.
Come on, get Sting. He's not busy. There's no police reunion happening. Get Sting.
Sting's a little long in the tooth at this point, John.
And Keanu's a spring friggin' chicken too. Okay.
Yeah, this is true. I wonder why they don't pick some no-name actor. I agree, blonde is more appropriate. But no, they're going with Keanu. They're going with star power. His name is going to draw people in. And if you weren't a fan,
does this put Berserker on the back burner for all of the people that have stacks and stacks and stacks of Berserkers?
I'm pretty sure it does. I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. The first Constantine movie was okay. I think Keanu has improved as an actor over time, and we'll see what he does in the second version.
Now, this book has been crazy. During the lockdown, this book went nuts, especially 9.8. The GPA for a 9.8 was at 3,500 at one point. Yeah. And, it's settled down. We're now at a good $2,000 for this book. I remember I sold one at a live sale at the height of this whole.
Yeah.
I was like, and it was a newsstand too. Gosh, I wish I had it so I could resubmit it, Richard.
I think this book is valuable regardless of whether there's a TV show or a movie tied to it. Constantine is just a part of DC's, I want to call it horror.
The dark side of the DC universe.
Yeah, the dark side. I was trying to think
Vertigo of we won't call it Vertigo, but we know what it is.
Yeah, exactly. He's that darker element, and supernatural is the stupid word I was trying to think of. And he is kind of the linchpin in making that supernatural, darker universe, more than just saying magic words backwards to cast spells. He actually gives some real meat to that genre, and I think he is an important character in his own right in comics.
It may explain why we see Joanna Constantine in Sandman instead of John. Because they wanted to keep him over to the side and not have that diluted in any way. And, will we see Etrigan the Demon? Will we see...
I hope so.
Will we see Zatanna? Will we see Blue Devil? Will we see Blue Devil?
I hope we see all three of them, actually. I'm sure we're going to see Zatanna. That's almost a given.
That'd be great. Time now for your favorite topic and mine, viewer mail.
You've got mail.
Our first piece of viewer mail comes to us at our email address, bronzeandmoderngods@gmail.com, from Glenn Simpson, who writes, not to let go of the damaging comics line of discussion. We're talking about selling pages and panels. What do you think about people who have comic books bound? It would seem to me to be a very damaging thing to do, putting tiny holes and or glue along the edges of comics. So I was surprised when I saw Overstreet had information regarding grading such things as if it was perfectly normal. Signed, Glenn Simpson. Glenn, bound comics were a common thing more in the 50s and 60s when people would want to save these things on their bookshelves, and there wasn't really that big of a collector's market yet. So you'll find vintage bound volumes. DC's library, they were bound volumes, a lot of those books. So it wasn't unheard of. I can see Overstreet giving grading guidelines for that kind of thing. Now, people binding books these days, I'm guilty. Do you know I have a bound volume?
Of what?
I have a bound volume of, I think, I have a couple. I think I did Quasar. I did a couple volumes of Quasar.
Who did you find to do the book binding?
Oh God, this was years ago. I couldn't even tell you. It was like 10, 15 years ago. Somebody in Hollywood that did this service. And I did it because they were all dollar books, got them in the dollar bin, and I wanted them on the shelf. And this is before they would ever think of reprinting Quasar. Nobody's going to reprint this book. And it was before anything was worth anything from Quasar. There were no keys for Quasar back then. But I would never bind a book that was worth something. But that's the thing. You never know what's going to pop. Who thought Quasar books were going to pop? So yeah, good question, Glenn.
Yeah. Bound books, well, like John says, I looked at bound books as books that someone seriously was collecting. If you went through the effort of getting a series of books and putting them in a binder, and because it's not inexpensive to do, you were planning on keeping those books for the long haul. And people bound the books. Some people put three-ring binder holes in the books. And it is, in my opinion, a legitimate method for collecting books. It's just not something that, like John says, that we would do typically today.
I wouldn't do it today. Yeah.
No.
Your next piece of your mail is along these lines about cutting things up.
Yeah, and it makes sense. From Kyle Elliott, talk about cutting up comic books. This is like when game used sports jerseys are cut up to make hundreds of patch cards because they'd make more money cutting them up than they ever could selling them complete. Yeah. So they would take actual jerseys, people who played the games, they think they're sweaty jerseys, and they would cut them into inch-size squares and mount them on cards so you could see the material through the card. And what a jersey sells for, what, $100, $200. They could make a fortune compared to that by cutting it up into pieces. And if I have less problems with people cutting up jerseys than I do with people cutting up comic books. That's completely my perspective because I'm a comic collector, not a jersey collector. I have a feeling, though, if I was a real jersey collector, I would look in horror at somebody taking a jersey and chopping it up into little tiny pieces.
If there's one thing we've learned about baseball card collectors, it's that they can never, ever affect the comic book market in a negative way. That's all I'm going to say about that. I mean, if you lived through the comic book crash of the 90s, these card collectors are just not, I'm going to keep myself out of trouble here and go on to our next piece of your mail from Ariel Estandarte. I hope I'm saying that right, Ariel. He also emailed us at bronzeandmoderngods@gmail.com. John and Richard, have you ever encountered marks inside the cases of CGC graded books? Here's pics of mine that I just received today and wondering if I should complain and risk a chance of losing my 9.8 when they re-encapsulate it. Any advice? Take a look at this, Richard. I thought he was going to refer to Newton rings.
Yeah.
These are not Newton rings. I don't know what the heck this is. It's almost like moisture got in there and then it dried, right? It looks like water.
Yeah, it does. And it's on the inside of the case. So it had to have happened during the encapsulation process.
So, Ariel, here's the thing. Normally, I would tell you, call customer service, get this sent back, and get it re-encapsulated. The only issue is it's that yellow Wolverine #1 cover. that is so tough to get a 9.8 because of the damage that was done with a lot of that shipment, and you have it signed as well, you're really taking a chance of losing your 9.8. So before you complain and send it in, try this. Cut a piece of Mylar bag and try to fit it from the bottom of the case where there is that little opening between the inner well and the plastic of the case, and just kind of work it in there and see if that's like almost like a Newton ring type effect, and see if you can separate it and make those things go away. Other than that, if those are actual marks on the plastic case and not just where it's touching the inner well, you're going to have to decide whether or not you want to take that chance. I would say you probably want to take the chance, because if you're trying to sell this book, you're going to sell it to someone and they're going to complain about it when they get it. You're going to end up with it back anyway, I think.
Yeah, I would do it mainly because that stain is going to be, you can see this book from 100 yards away, and you will be able to pick out those spots on this book. And you're not going to be satisfied with your purchase until something is done, until it's addressed. So at least I wouldn't be.
Yeah.
I would send it in. I would make a note with the submission saying, very clearly what the problem is, because you want to make sure that they realize that the problem is on their end, and and hopefully they will take care to resolve the issue. I'm hoping the problem's on the inside of the case and not inside.
I would walk them through it. When I call them, I would say, don't take it out of the inner well, just replace that plastic case and make sure it's very clear, and take pictures of it before you send it back in. I see you have pictures here. So
very important. The more pictures, the better. The more history you have that you can share with them about the condition, how it was when you received the book. And like John says, make sure you tell them to not cut the inner well unless it's absolutely necessary. If they don't, shouldn't be. Yeah. And I think you will be able to retain your 9.8.
Great. All right. More chopping broccoli, more chopping up books. I see in your next piece of viewer mail.
Yeah. That was a theme. Well, this is from our friend of the show, our pal Greg McPherson. I own some of these of those cards. We're talking about again, chopped up comic books. I own some of those cards in the Fleer X-Men and Spider-Man sets, and quite frankly, I thought the pages were reproductions. It's crazy to me that pieces of classic Spidey books were actually used for these chase cards. Also, the rarity of these cards varies, and many of them sell for several $100s. Yeah, that is, again, me personally, as a comic book collector, I hate to see rare books chopped into pieces. But if you're a card collector, maybe this is something that you find acceptable and desirable. So I'm never going to gainsay somebody's method of collecting. For me, it's not the way to treat those books.
I'm just going to be salty, so I'm just going to move on to the next piece of viewer mail, which is from Splash Panel Comics, who emailed us at bronzeandmoderngods@gmail.com. We hear you being lukewarm on Dell's quantity over quality approach, but in the mid-'60s, they started using their back covers for pinups, which are basically proto-virgin variants featuring full-size prints of the front cover without titles or the trade dress. They did this for everything from the first 13 issues of Dr. Solar to Buck Rogers, but some of the most striking examples come from oddities like Total War, with covers by an artist named George Wilson. Yes. On good condition copies, these covers are a great alternative for anyone else who might be a little tired of yet another Bronze Age Marvel back cover ad. So leave Dell alone. Splash Panel. Now, keep in mind, there are variants of those covers. Not all of the same books have that back cover. Some of them have ads. So you have to, when you're buying a Dr. Solar #5, you have to open it up and look at the back cover to see if it's the pinup or if it's an ad cover, because there are variants. Dell, I hear you about Dell, but are we talking about Dell? Are we talking about Gold Key? Are we talking about Western Publishing? It's so mixed up, that history of this this company, and I make the mistake often of just saying Dell over and over again when I'm referring to all three companies. For the people that don't know the twisted history, Google it sometime. Dell was its own publishing company, and they bought books that were packaged to them for them by a company called Western Publishing, which owned the rights to Disney and things like that. And then Western went off and did their own thing and changed the name to Gold Key while Dell was still. Oh, it's a twisted history. But if you stick with Dark Shadows like I do, you'll be fine.
Have you ever got your Dark Shadows one yet?
I have a Dark Shadows one. It does not have a poster. I need a Dark Shadows #1 with a poster, people. So if anybody's got a good lead, I love Dark Shadows. Oh, if you've never seen that show, it's so campy. It's so over the top. It's the best. And the comic book is even better because it's just, it has nothing to do with the show. Just there's a vampire named Barnabas. About it.
Yeah. Yes. Think 50s soap opera without the fun.
Yeah, it was 60s and early 70s. It ran to 1971, and it was lots of fun.
Oh my goodness!
You know what? Maybe for Halloween this year, we'll do a little. I'll do a little section of Dark Shadows for underrated book of the week.
That sounds great. I would love to hear your exposition on Dark Shadows.
All right, and you, Richard, your viewer mail is all cut up comics all the time.
Yeah, I picked this one because of the source material. This is Cujo Bite. Upper Deck's new Spider-Man metal set has an AF-15 card. Yes, they cut up an AF-15. My buddy hit one. It's a great card, but my heart sinks knowing they cut one up. Also on Signature Slab, I like anything from 1985 to 1990 and up signed, but absolutely nothing before 1980. I agree with you completely on that. I'm trying to think. Do I have anything that's after? Oh, okay. I do have I have an X-Men 94 signed by Chris Claremont. Claremont's my man. So I will pass that. But I don't think I have anything else pre 1980 that's signed.
You didn't have Stan Lee scribble on a random copy of a Ringo Kid number 13.
No. I actually don't have very many signed books in my collection. Most of them are important, like Walt Simonson signing Thor 337. Yep. Mark Bagley signing Ultimate Fallout 4. Things like that. They're all important to me.
I think I just got soured on Signature Series books when I would go to conventions here in LA, and I would see the long lines for poor Stan Lee, who was in his 80s. 90s at the time, being propped up, basically signing books, and people are like, here's a stack of Venom Lethal Protector #1 for you to sign, Stan. It's like, he had nothing to do with Venom, you guys. Yeah. And that just soured me. I know I'm old, I'm crotchety. I'm very crotchety this month.
Yeah, but no, they're look at the Todd McFarlane's Signature Series. It's Todd gets premium money for his signature.
At least he co-created the character, though.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. Sending random books doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Stan, can you sign my Logan's Run #1? I mean, you see these books and you're like, I know you don't read comic books because you would know better. Oh my gosh, if I could only go back in time, Richard, blah, 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 25-year rule. Yes, that was a lame transition for our 25-year rule, where we go back to 1997 and look at the books that made the late 90s. This week, we're going to do a little dip into the Rob Liefeld pool.
Oh, wow. Pockets.
I know. Awesome comics. Judgment Day Alpha #1. Richard, you might actually want this book because it was the first issue of Alan Moore's relaunch and reimagining of Rob Liefeld's awesome comics universe. Now, Alan Moore had been hired by Rob to reimagine Supreme. Fantastic run. If you've never read the Alan Moore Supreme run, the art is until Chris Sprouse comes on. Once Chris Sprouse is on, things pick up. And he was doing so well with Supreme that Rob gave him the keys to the kingdom, said, reimagine Youngblood, reimagine all of my characters. And Rob smartly got the F out of the way and just let Alan do his thing. Excellent story here. by Alan Moore. That's his name. Art by Rob Liefeld. Okay. Gil Kane, Stephen Platt, Keith Giffen. Okay. The beginnings of a great story here. This was followed by this was followed by Judgment Day issues 1 through 3, Judgment Day, Omega, and Judgment Day Aftermath. So all this was done. This was all set up, ready to move into the next phase of the Awesome Universe. No, poof, Awesome Comics goes out of business. Wow. Now, a set of these various books and the cover variants sold last month on eBay for a whole $55, which is much more than I thought these would sell for. I read this when it came out because I was reading Supreme and they were advertising this, and I thought, hey, he's doing a great job on Supreme. I'll give Rob some money. And Judgment Day was good. It has to do with a trial with some people from Youngblood. I don't remember the plot exactly, but I know I enjoyed it. So, Richard, you haven't read Supreme yet, have you?
Nope. This was after I had left the hobby.
It is. I don't think it's that. I don't think you can get it officially digitally from anywhere because there are some rights issues, but little gray market digital action, and you can read the whole run. I highly recommend it. And you guys read Supreme? Let us know in the comments. Time for our underrated books of the week. Richard, what is yours?
We talked earlier about Gold Key books and Dell books. This is kind of related. My pick is Jonny Quest #1. But the Comico /Comico, the 1986 version. There is a Gold Key from 1964, the first appearance of Jonny Quest in comics. It is not underrated, just like a lot of the Hanna-Barbera early, Saturday morning cartoon comics.
Like #1,
Scooby-Doo. Yeah. All of those books are high in nostalgia value, and they're very, very collectible. If you come across them in a yard sale or a garage sale, pick them up. Pick them up. All these Gold Key books from the mid '60s. I think they're great buys. This is a book from 1986. It's got a Doug Wiley wraparound cover. It is again printed in the 1980s. It features all the characters: Johnny, Race Banner, Haji and his dad, and don't forget the dog Bandit. I think this is an untapped IP. To me, this intellectual property is dormant right now, but I think it's got adventure. It's just a great set of characters that I would love to see reimagined and revitalized. And this again, we are talking about nostalgia value. This, for people my age who grew up watching, cartoons came on Saturday morning. There wasn't a channel of nothing but cartoons 24 hours. You got up early so you could watch them, the first thing that came on, and then you watched them all the way through the afternoon until wrestling or Superhost came on.
American Bandstand was always kind of sad for me. It meant the cartoons were over.
Yeah. And that was it. That was your week. Thanks. This is one of those shows, and it has a lot of nostalgia. I think there is obviously, as we've talked about the Gold Key version of it, there's an opportunity to get in on the ground floor of this 1986 version while it's still affordable. 9.8s are only $100. You can get them on eBay from $15, $20 if you just want to read or just want to collect them at that rate. There are 83 9.8s on the census out of 204 copies. In comparison, there are 0 9.8s of the Gold Key Jonny Quest books, at least on CGC. There may be some CBCS. I didn't look at their stats.
Interesting, because there's so many file copies of those books. I would think one would come to
9.6s. There's 9.6s, but no one has had a 9.8 graded yet.
Well, let's not forget the main selling point of Jonny Quest in history, with the first stable same-sex couple with Dr. Quest and Race Bannon.
I never looked at it that way. I guess you're right.
They were great parents to young Johnny. No, I love Jonny Quest. And, You know, there's undertones there. That's all I'll say. It's not a new observation I'm making here. Moving on to my underrated book of the week. It is What If number 105. Richard, this is the first appearance of Spider-Girl.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Spider-Verse, Mr. I love all the spider characters. Do you have a What If number 105?
I do not. I have the reprint of this book.
Mhm.
It's a number 0. I can't think of the actual
Spider-Girl Zero.
yeah. I do
Yes.
have that. I do not have this the original.
Would you consider this really the first alternate universe spider character?
Yeah, I would. I think
would
so.
too. This, of course, led into Spider-Girl's ongoing series that ran for more than 100 issues. Spider-Girl was a book I was reading. It was by Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz. It seemed like every 10 issues it was getting canceled, and fans would write into Joe Quesada and say, you cannot cancel Spider-Girl. And it really worked over and over and over again. This book was almost canceled so many times. And finally, when it got to like issue 100, they finally said, look, we got to cancel this book. They did reboot it a couple of times and try it again with a new number 1. And I think they rebooted it again with something called Spider-Man Family, where she was the lead story in that every issue. But, you know, Spider-Girl's kind of been put to the side. People don't really talk about Mayday Parker anymore, which is weird because I would think when they did the Spider-Verse movie, she would be one of the spider-related characters. I guess because she wasn't a substitute for Peter Parker, but rather his daughter. Maybe that's
it. She is not a part of the current storyline for the Spider-Verse, but I wouldn't be surprised if she shows up as a part of it at some point.
It would help if she had a different costume. I think
it is
part of it.
Yeah, that's why I think Spider-Gwen is such a hit. She's obviously a separate character from Peter, and she stands out.
Super cool costume with the hoodie and the white.
Yeah.
I mean, it's different. Whereas Spider-Girl is, you know, teenage girl wearing Spider-Man's costume, or Ben Reilly's, really, if you look at it really closely. A CGC 9.8 of What If number 105 sold this month for $679, which sounds impressive until you realize that's down from the 12-month average of $863. So this is the dip, people. Buy the dip.
Yeah. And that's why I don't have a copy of it, because it's been too expensive for me to pick up.
I do think it's underrated. I do think it's truly underrated. I think people will focus on Edge of Spider-Verse number 2, Ultimate Fallout 4, even the first appearance of Spider-Punk, for God's sake, and they forget about Aranya and Spider-Girl.
Give them time.
Yeah, maybe. Don't even get me started on the 90s Spider-Woman. Do you remember that?
Oh, no.
Written by John Byrne and drawn by Bart Sears.
Really?
Yeah, that was a strange series.
Written by Burns?
Written by Byrne, John Byrne, when he came back to Spider-Man in the early 2000s. Indeed.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy. Maybe we'll talk about that in a future episode, because we're going to wrap this one up. Richard, remind everybody where they can find us online.
They can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Bronze and Modern Gods, or on the website bronzeandmoderngods.com.
If you guys enjoy this video, please show us some love by hitting like and subscribing if you haven't already. We do appreciate it, and we will catch you next time.
Everybody stay safe.